So today I am going to be talking about ICE and illegal immigration enforcement. So mostly it's going to be about ICE and illegal immigration and um, what's been done, what are they doing, what's been happening with the present, and what's been happening in the past. So, first off, what is ICE? It stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It was created on March 1st, 2003, right after the whole attack with 9/11 happened. They wanted to make sure nothing like that happened ever again and they were more secure with their borders. It consists of two enforcement entities. It's the Homeland Security Investigations and Enforcement and Removal Operations. So they're just kind of like smushed together. The responsibilities are countering transnational crime, federal and custom laws, investigating, apprehending, arresting, detaining, and removal illegal aliens. Their motto is integrity, courage, and excellence. So, before I go any further, I just want to make something clear. I'll probably bring it up further into the PowerPoint, but I didn't really understand. I didn't really understand the difference between ICE and border control. I thought they were really just like they're the same thing, but it turns out obviously ICE is more into this. It's like a police for criminals who are from another country who come here and they try to send them back and they do what is right. And then we have our border control who is at the border and they are responsible for patrolling and monitoring and securing the US and making sure nobody comes into the US who is not valid to come in without, papers or any sort of documents. Okay, so moving on. Um, the enforcement and removal. Okay, their job is to identify, arrest, and remove aliens. Their main priorities are to apprehend, arrest, remove convicted criminals, fugitives, and recent border entrants. So, um, a lot of people these days seem to see ICE as um, people who separate families and they are just grabbing whoever is illegal. Recently, what I've been reading and what I've been noticing when doing my research is that back when Obama was president, ICE was mainly focused on criminals who were part of, like, narcotics or bringing stuff in or doing illegal stuff. But as time went by and Trump went into office, ICE kind of started changing their perspective on what they should be doing. So instead of really going just after what's more important, of like the criminals who have been doing bad things and bringing in drugs and bringing in weapons, they are now combining them with the people who are just living here, working hard, and have families. And even though they have no papers, they've never had like any criminal record. So they're just putting them together. So now their main priority is to grab anybody who is illegal and send them back to their countries. Next is the cracking down on those who produce fraudulent documents to enable unlawful activity. So most people, when coming into the U.S., in order for you to get a license, to get certain things, you have to have a social security number or a valid ID or something that proves that you're here. And so they'll create, or people will even often sell their social security numbers to people who are in need and they need the money. Um, so a lot of people, so ICE also does that. So the process when going into when going into this place, this detention centers, going through the whole process of being arrested, getting sent somewhere for a little while you're waiting for the immigration judge to decide whether or not you should go or you can stay, depending on your situation. And then the last is removal. Now, I'm going to go step by step with this. So, this is called the ERO process. So, first, obviously, it's the arrest. They find the criminals, they find anybody who was convicted of anything and who is illegal and they have done something wrong. Next, as soon as they get to the detention centers, right away, they have the right to make a free phone call to their counsel or their officials, which is part of the 1932 treaty. After the arrest, um, they are actually moved into the detention center, so where they'll be staying. Um, Now, when I was looking into this, I was looking at a video about the detention centers. They obviously there are they have to comply with the standards that there is, but we all know that not everything is what it seems. So, of course it may seem like it's a nice place, like everything's like good, like nobody does anything wrong, but we also have to think about the officers who are racist, who are just, not doing the right thing, or they're not getting the proper food, they're not getting the right treatment, they're not getting anything of the sort, you know? So, what also what they have in the detention centers, it's not just with the criminals, they also have these family units. So let's say if everybody in your family is illegal and they were all caught, they would be staying in one of these places, in one of these rooms that's meant for them. Now, when in the detention center, you also have access to the courts, to legal materials, lawyers, like your standard, you know, uh, right to be able to find out what's going on and be a part of what's everything that's been happening. Um, when you are there and you are already processed and everything, they provide you with a Know Your Rights packet, which is given to them. And in that packet, it gives you the rules and sanctions, disciplinary system, the mail and visiting procedures, grievance system, services and programs, and medical care. Now, many people don't know about these certain things that they have in the detention centers because we all just think they are, let me give you an example, locked up in these cages like this. And yes, of course, we've just been seeing that, but there are also places where they just have them in jail, in like a jail or a prison, I'm sorry. So now, when going throughout the time before you were able to be removed and being sent back to your country, you cannot be sent for removal because of due process. Okay, even though a lot of people tend to disagree with this because, oh, they're not citizens, they don't have rights, like they weren't here. But yeah, they're still in the country, which I still believe they have the right, which I honestly tend to agree with this, the due process. So, first off, when the with the removal proceedings, the officers or the ICE officers, they monitor each case until removed. No one is removed without due process till all legal proceedings are done. Once everything is done and the judge has made their decision, they have to review documents with the person who is being removed, make sure everything is right and correct, all their information is right, and they send it back to their country, to their original country, and send it to the embassy and make sure that everything is correct and um, everything. But if, let's say, like they sent the papers and they don't get a response and um, they haven't received anything in 30 days, they will try and talk to them again and try to work something out because ICE is also hoping that their country complies with what has happened and what they've done. Now, after that, then they are ready for removal and they're allowed to go be sent back to their country. So it could either be on a plane, it could be on a bus, it could be anything really. Now, the goal for all immigrants in this, when going into the enforcement and removal, is for them to receive um, the right to, like, for them to go back to their country. And initially, this is like the way for ICE. This is their main goal. Now, with containing immigration, so obviously there's many things. So with border control, they work closely with Canada and Mexico. They have personnel, they have technology and infrastructure. Now, and the front lines, such as with the borders, um, the CBD patrol, border patrol agents, they have agricultural specialists and marine agents and officers who are all in this. So obviously, like, it's not just on land where you can just cross. People often can take boats. They can, swim. They can, there's like in this photo that I recently watched or have seen that there's literally just like a little wall like between the beaches from San Diego and Mexico. And it just seems pretty easy, and you can just imagine how many officers are there trying to make sure nobody goes over. So now I want to talk a little bit about border control. There was an increase in border control staffing. They're wanting to construct a new infrastructure and fencing. They want to advance the technology, including sensors, radar, aerial assessed investment to modernize the ports of entry, stronger partnerships and information sharing. So they really want to be connected with the people who are near these borders and make sure they get information about what's being done, who's coming in and out. They want to create a safer, more secure, and efficient border environment. And now this is why a lot of people are really pushing for that wall that's between Mexico and the United States. Because although there is a very long border, there are some parts in the US or parts where there is literally no wall and people could be coming in and out. But of course, there are going to be certain people who just move right along. So, now people might ask, how can I become a citizen? What are some ways for me to be able to stay? Now, this is for the illegal immigrants, So, first off, many people have heard of it, I believe. It's called DACA or Dreamers. DACA is called the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. The RIP, they have to have an RIP for at least 5 years. They are under the age of 16 when they entered the U.S. They must have a high school diploma and at least 2 years of higher education diploma, so, college. The RIP status. Now, RIP status is something that many people tend to get when they first enter, or when they're on their way, they want to become a citizen. So they must show and continue to be physically present in the U.S. on or before December 31st of 2011. They must pass all background checks, so no criminal record, and then they must satisfy any applicable federal tax liability. So, for example, in my research paper, I will be talking about my dad and what I've experienced. And so when he was giving the opportunity to stay, obviously he was not a citizen, so he didn't pay taxes. So when given that, they told him that he had to pay a certain amount to the IRS, and he did. So depending on how long you've been here, they're going to tax you about what you've been, doing. Now, the RPI grant, they have lawful status for 6 years, and this will not be for the non-immigrant status. They have a lawful work permit. So this is for like people who just want to come here to work. Now, they must have a valid social security number in order for them to have the RPI. When they have the RPI, they will have a valid social security number. Those are the pros. They'll have the availability to travel outside the U.S. Restrictions may apply, and the agricultural workers. Now, I want to go back and talk about the DACA. DACA is something that's been around since Obama was in office, and many people seem to have, there have been protests, as you can see here, that people are saying that this isn't fair. There are kids who have come here since they were young, and now they have to be deported after they've already gotten their education and everything. And when Trump came into office, they couldn't necessarily abolish it, just like in a Supreme Court reading that I was looking up on, it was the U.S. Department of Homeland Security versus the regions of California, and they were really trying to find a way in order to really diminish the DACA, but because they said that the regions, I'm sorry, they said that DACA wasn't very lawful because it wasn't under jurisdiction law. So there was obviously going to be a little one-on-one, but eventually they said that DACA already had so many recipients that they just, they're still trying to like think about and what they could do to really make it lawful, but also not harm the people who are in the program. Now, DACA permitted certain individuals who came to the United States as juveniles and met several criteria, including any current lawful immigration status, to request considering of deferred action for a period of 2 years, subject to renewal, and eligibility for work authorization. So these are the things that most people would use DACA for. Now, this program would help with children, who came here. Now, a lot of people don't really know how to get there, and I just wanted to I couldn't really put what I saw, but I just want to give a little brief summary of what. So for the Dreamers, obviously, or the DACA people, they had to have they had to meet the requirements of like being here before the 31st of December 2011. They had to satisfy taxes. They have to pass the background checks. There are certain bars of crimes when they cannot be there. So if they're convicted of a felony, aggravated felony, or anything like that, unlawful voting or drug related, it wasn't waived. They can't really do anything. And then they also might have to look into a in-person interview. Now, for a lawful permanent resident to be an actual citizen coming from DACA, they have to have the status entry of them being here at least 5 years and was under the age of 16. There's not going to be any fine or penalty that they have to do. They have to do another background check, make sure they've done nothing since they've gotten here. They have to know English and the civics, so the history and everything. They have to have the high school education, anything that's equivalent to that, or anything higher to that education, so military service or whatever it may be. Now, when it comes to just citizenship, it's just its own being. Those who did come after they're 16 or they're not part of DACA, they have to go through registered provisional immigrants. So there's certain things, so the same old, they have to be here before 31st of December. Background checks, certain crimes bars, they have to have an in-person interview, and after that they have to renew the RPI so they could stay another couple of years, but there may be application fees. They have to satisfy the federal tax liability, pass another background checks. Do they have the employment or education? Because most people don't. They are limited to travel, but no more than 180 days in one calendar year. Now, when they want to be a lawful permanent resident status, the eligibility, they must go through the background checks, but without triggering any bars. So they cannot have any, they can't go past the bar of the criminal checks. So then they have to, for the taxes, they have to satisfy the federal tax liability. They have to learn English or have an exam taken to know how much they know, have an education. They cannot be out of the country or absent for more than 180 days, and they may have to have an interview as well. Now, for agricultural workers, now that's different. These are the people who are just here to work in the US. So the employment, for them to be employed here to get a blue card status, which is after 5 years of the Act's enactment, blue card status holders can apply for lawful permanent resident. So they must perform at least 575 hours or 100 work days in agriculture during a 2-year period ending on December 31st, 2012. Now, if they want to have this card and they have children, they cannot their child must be in the U.S., must have been in the U.S. since the 31st of December. Of course, there's going to be a penalty, a fee, but this is only for people who are over the age of 21. They have to go through background checks. They have to go through the certain crimes and grounds of admissible bar applications, and they have to have an in-person interview to make sure everything is right. Now, when having a blue card status, they're required to provide the Secretary of Agriculture with an annual written report of the employment, so it proves to them that they are working and that they are there. Now, after that, they can become a lawful resident, permanent resident, which leads to their citizenship. They have to remain eligible for the blue card. The employment during the 8-year period after enacted of the Act, perform at least 100 days of agricultural work during 5 years, or during the 5-year period. They have to pay a fine or fee of $400, and their taxes satisfy any federal tax liability, and they have to apply for this before their blue card expires, and they must also be required to make an in-person interview. So see, there's a lot of things that go on, and it may seem easy, but at the same time, people don't seem to understand that there is a very long process for all of this to happen. Because if you really think about it, there are a lot of illegal immigrants in this country, but how long is it going to take for them to be able to get the papers that they need in order for them to be safe and secure in this country? Now, that's what a lot of people are questioning and what I feel this country has to work on. Now, the stats. With ICE, their arrest in 2018 was 158,581 aliens were arrested. 90% were criminal convictions, 66 criminal charges, 21 were previously issued final orders. Detention centers were filled with 396,448 into the detention centers, and there is an increase of 22.5% since the last year of the year before, so it was 2017. Now, the removals, 256,086 illegal aliens. There was an increase of 13% from the year before of 2017. Now, 57 of those were convicted criminals, and 5,914 were classified as either gang members or terrorists. So, on your left here, you're going to see, I'm going to use my pointer, you can look on the website if you'd like, but it shows the majority of where ICE has been lately. As you can see, it's been updated since the 22nd of November of last year. But it shows where they have been getting, and I wish I could do it on here, but it shows you the numbers of how many people they have arrested or what they've done, and it shows the majority of where they have been going and how many and what they've done or what they were convicted and what they've done. So it's very helpful. Now, to really end this, I wanted to follow up with what is going on now. Concerning COVID-19, obviously everywhere has been locked down, so we can't really, so schools have been locked down, like nobody's really allowed to go outside, and This is really troubling for ICE, especially because of what is happening. They can't really go after the people. And what I read in the Washington Post, ICE said or made a statement saying ICE will stop making immigration enforcement inside the U.S. They will, however, focus on criminals during the outbreak. They told members of Congress that its highest priorities are to promote life-saving and public safety activities. No enforcements will be carried out near healthcare facilities, hospitals, doctor's office, accredited health clinics, and urgent care facilities. So they will not be anywhere around those places, which they know they probably will, because if somebody is sick, then they will probably, and then if they feel better or not, then they'll just take them and send them back, which is not the really smartest idea during this time. Now, approximately 37,000 of those detainees have that's how many they have in their facilities at this moment. But 20,000 of those have a criminal history, so obviously there have been in recent cases, not just with ICE, but just in the criminal justice system itself, there are people trying to get out of jail and get probation or go on parole, just so that they don't get the virus. So a lot of people have been doing that as well, but if 20,000 of those have criminal history or are criminals, then it's kind of like an uh-oh situation, because they're trying not to get everybody sick, but at the same time, they can't just let somebody out loose into the world. Now, their new priorities at this timeline their new priorities at this timeline up with Obama's administration, which is felons, not families. So, what's been happening is, instead of really looking for families and going after people who are just like illegal itself but have no criminal record, they're not going after them. I mean, if they're not going to try and find them, but if they show up, they'll probably, arrest them. But and more initially, they're trying to look after those who are having criminal records or felons or have to do something with that. Now, they're trying to also make sure they're not trying to spread any of the virus, so they've suspended visits. They have taken steps to prevent the disease, and they have done all these different things. But a lot of people who are trying to get their, let's say, a family member out of jail, they are using the excuse of they are at high, they are in more danger of being in where they are than where they were at their house with their family because of the virus. So, so now mostly what ICE is doing, as I said before, is just looking out for the majority of those who have criminal convictions and not just anybody, which Trump is really trying to do and send anybody who is illegal back to their country. But that is all. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.